Hi, I'm Chris, and this is the Poco X3 GT that was just released, has been announced, and we have the Poco F3, which has been out for a while. Now, I wanted to compare both of these models here. Dimensity 1100 versus Snapdragon 870. Is there going to be a huge difference? Well, a little bit of a spoiler. They are actually very close in terms of raw performance, speed, and graphics performance. So there's a difference in the screens, of course, AMOLED versus IPS, battery capacities, charging rates, and the main cameras. 48 megapixels versus 64. There will be a small camera comparison in this video here. So on the right, it's the Poco F3, and on the left, of course, the X3 GT. Now, screen sizes on both of these are very, very similar. We are looking at 6.67 versus 6.6 here. IPS, AMOLED, Full HD Plus displays on both of them, and the cutout in the front here are a lot smaller on the Poco F3. This is an AMOLED screen, and you can see there's a little bit of a flicker going on here, and that is because this AMOLED panel does not have DC dimming, which I'd really like to see. This IPS maximum brightness is 470 versus well over 1,000 nits is the peak that it can go to with the Poco right here, with the F3, and that's a very, very bright screen. So screen, hands down, it's much better, slightly better bezels too as well with the Poco F3. It's just that banding you can see coming through a little bit on camera, but in person I'm not seeing that. So the weight of them, very, very similar here too. So we've got 193 grams with the X3 GT versus 196 with the Poco, slightly heavier. Now, both of these support 5G. We've got the Snapdragon 870. This has 6 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage. And this review unit here from Poco has 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage, and it does have the Dimensity 1100 in this one. So backing materials, we've got glass on the back with the Poco F3 and plastic here with the X3 GT. And the camera setup on both of them is similar, but the main sensor on the Poco, this one is 48 megapixels versus 64. And there will be a camera comparison, a small one in this video. 8 megapixel ultra wides and two 2 megapixel cameras. We do have the microphone right there with the Poco F3, which is not present with the X3 GT. And look at the front of them here with the screens. So Gorilla Glass Victus is on the X3 GT, has the better glass, the better protection, you could say, for the drop resistance there. Gorilla Glass 5 on this one, 6.67 inches, 6.6. So they are very, very similar in size. Now the fingerprint unlocking on both of them, very similar, but they're both side always-on capacitive fingerprint readers. I do find that the F3 is the fastest, but there's really not much in it. When you see that, I'll lock it now and touch it on the X3 GT. They're really almost the same, but there's just a split second or so faster on the F3. Now, up the top of both of these, you'll see here we do have IR transmitters, and we've also got our loudspeakers. So they both support dual loudspeakers, which is great to see. And then down the bottom here, we have Type-C ports, both USB 2 data. Now, the SIM tray, SIM support, there is no 3.5 millimeter headphone jack with this, and both of them take dual nano SIMs here. So if you needed, for example, to have a micro SD card in your phone, well, you're out of luck with these. No micro SD card support, no 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And build quality, plastic frame is mentioned on these. So it does feel pretty good. And overall, they are a solid phone, but I think the Poco F3 just has a nicer build and finish to it over the X3 GT. I'll just show you the settings as well we get. So both of these are 120Hz displays, but they're of course the difference between the AMOLED, the IPS, and really the same kind of options are present there. So you can change the white balance, the scaling, refresh rate. You can force it onto 120Hz, which I'm currently doing now. So on camera, because of the shimmering that's going on, because there's no DC dimming with the pulse width modulation, the flicker we're getting on the F3, it actually comes out looking worse right now, but it's just on camera. Trust me, the F3 is the brighter, better screen, and the blacks are deep. You don't have any issues like you do with the IPS panel on this one. When you look at it at certain angles, you see around the cutout here, the pixels are slightly dimmer, and around the edges too, and that really does not happen, although you can see it's dimming, but the color is still uniform, the brightness is still uniform there with that one too as well. So just getting out of this, both of them are running Android 11, MIUI 12.5, and I find ROM performance, I won't go into this into a lot of depth, but I do think that it feels a little bit smoother at times on the X3, which is kind of odd because it's not actually the most powerful chip out of these two. The Dimensity 1100 is very, very good, but the Snapdragon 870 is slightly better there. Now, I've noticed that occasionally I do get on both of them a few little micro stutters. So the frame rate is not always a solid 120 Hertz when in the UI, and especially sometimes like if I haven't used the phone for a while and I'll go and just swipe down the toggles, especially present with the Poco F3, occasionally it will do a tiny little bit of a frame drop there, and you do pick up and notice that when you go from, say, 120 Hertz 120 frames per second normally, to then see this suddenly chug at like 30 frames per second. You notice that, and occasionally it will happen too with the X3 GT. Now, both of them, they've had minor little bugs present with the Poco F3. It's getting slightly better in that regard, and the ROM stability on both of them seems to be good, but there are just a few little minor things with these particular phones here. But let's go over some benchmarks now. So with the battery charge times, we have 33 watts on the Poco F3 and 67 watts here charging. And the difference of the charge time is next to nothing. You can see 49 minutes to fully charge the smaller battery on the Poco, which is 4,520 milliamp hours. So that's 49 minutes. 52 minutes here to go from 2% to 100 with a slightly larger 5,000 milliamp hour battery, although it's claiming that the true capacity is a little bit less there, but that is going to fluctuate. Note that this went from 14% to 100. This was from 2%. So yes, the X3 GT at the 67 watts is a faster charger, but it's not really lagging behind too much the Poco F3. And there is a big difference in our battery life run times with this fixed battery benchmark here. So both the displays were calibrated to 200 nits of brightness over 14 hours and 10 hours. Massive, massive difference here. Now, in real world use, the difference isn't that great. So you're looking around realistic about 8 hours, 7 hours screen on time versus about 6 hours with the X3 GT. This is at 120 Hertz, which is okay. Now, I did say in my review of this one that the battery life is good, but I forgot at the time that the battery life on the Poco F3 here is just so much better than the X3 GT. If you're someone that relies heavily on GPS accuracy, I found it to be the best on the X3 GT and also a better signal strength. You can see it picked up more satellites. So that is a huge change from what we used to have with MediaTek versus Qualcomm. It's now the MediaTek newer chips that have the better GPS in them. The same goes for the wireless speeds. The Poco F3 is very, very fast, but at the same point downstairs, away from my router, we're getting 222 megabits per second versus 317 on the X3 GT. So the Dimensity 1100 has just better wireless performance. Not by much, but I do notice in general that it seems to be a bit faster. Maximum speeds are over a gigabit and almost a gigabit on the Poco F3. So the best wireless is the X3 GT. Now, this one's not completely fair because I've got a difference in the storage size, the capacity. So 128 UFS 3.1 versus 256. And take a look at the differences here. The random reads and writes are, in fact, faster on the Poco F3. You can clearly see that. There's a bit of a difference there, but the sequential reads and writes much quicker on the X3 GT. And Tutu version 9 scores here do clearly show that the Snapdragon 870 is a faster chipset by about 80,000 points. Not really much in it. Now, when you use both of them and gaming, which I'll get onto shortly, the difference, you don't really see it that much at all between these two. So there's not much in it at all. And then our DRM cert levels, well, we've got level 1, which we want, of course, on the Poco F3, and level 3 at the time of this video on the X3 GT. But I do believe that Poco will be issuing a firmware update that will give us the security level 1 that we need for streaming. So Netflix should then be in full HD, which it is with the Poco F3. In our gaming performance, this title here is PUBG, and I'm just showing you the settings now because the graphics option on both of them, frame rate, you can set the extreme option on them both. And when I've been playing the games, they seem really performance-wise to be almost identical, reflecting that very close and 2 graphics score. But I'll jump into a little bit of gameplay now. So here with the X3 GT, the performance seems exactly the same as the Poco F3. So really identical performance here from both of them. I'll just look around the map here. It doesn't seem to feel really any smoother, although the Poco F3 is a little faster. Now, both of these phones, they get warm when you play games for, say, an hour, extended periods. I do see them both getting up to 50 degrees Celsius. And I've done that and checked that in the reviews of both of these phones. You can see that using my thermal imaging camera. So right now, again, same performance really when it comes to gaming on both of them. Although I would have to say that, yes, the F3 is just a fraction faster. And onto our audio quality now on both of these. So we don't have a 3.5mm headphone jack. You must use a Type-C to 3.5 adapter. Both quality-wise sound similar. I would rate using the Type-C adapter to 3.5 as the Poco F3 marginally better, but not much. And the same goes for the loudspeakers. They sound almost identical. I wish it was a little bit louder on both of them. So what I'll do now is play the same track at 100% volume and let me know in the comments which one you think sounds the best out of the 2 loudspeakers on this. So first up, the Poco F3. So there's basically nothing in it. Maybe the Poco F3 is a fraction louder, but when it comes to the mids, the bass, and the trebles, they really are identical. And then onto our cameras now. So for stills, I found that the 64 megapixel camera is not really giving us that much of an advantage. Sometimes it can take a better shot than the Poco F3. The ultra wides are very, very similar in quality too. But when it comes to portrait shots, this is where there was a bit of a difference, as you can see. And selfies. So the X3 GT at the time of this video, the 16 megapixel camera, it's not because of the megapixel count, it's because of the optimization. Overexposed shots, far too bright, too white. So the Poco F3 did a better job of capturing that. And for video performance, the Poco F3, I found the stability is better and overall just better video performance. Okay, so both of these phones here, they are very fast. They are powerhouse mobile phones with the Dimensity 1100 and the Snapdragon 870, which does pull ahead in the synthetic benchmarks. Now, when playing games, they really seem quite similar. They both get hot when playing games for extended periods. Camera-wise, the Poco F3 is the winner for me with the better video performance, the better selfies, and just overall, I think the more mature software there and optimization of the camera definitely helps out. It also has, at the time of this video, Widevine level 1. Now there is a big difference I wanted to point out with the band support here, which is very important for anyone watching from Europe. The Poco F3 has LTE band 20. The X3 GT does not have LTE band 20. And that is a big one there. I think a lot of people need that. So I am currently stuck on 3G a lot with the Poco X3 GT. And I do get onto 5G, normally about 2 bars of signal. And with the Poco F3, I normally have about 3 bars, slightly better. And I have taken a look at the actual signal strength of them. It does seem slightly better with the Poco F3. So to me, that is the one to go for. You've also got the much brighter AMOLED screen, even though they're both 120 Hz screens. The IPS is inferior. The AMOLED is much better. You get the glass on the back here versus plastic. Sadly, both of them don't support micro SD cards or 3.5mm headphone jacks. So thank you so much for watching this detailed comparison here between the X3 GT and the F3. I hope you did like it. Do subscribe for more and check out my individual reviews of both of these phones.